Narcissism, it's a pathological self-absorption first identified as a mental disorder by the British essayist and physician Havelock Ellis in 1898. Do you ever look at yourself in the mirror and think, wow, I look good? There's a very fine line between being a narcissist and being self-confident. I believe that this is the same way as there's a very fine line between when do we cross it and how do we identify it and make sure that we're not overstepping the boundaries and we're not being too much into ourselves and we're not coming across as people who are truly being self-observed and self-centered. With that being said, don't feel bad. About 85% of the population are self-observed. Even if we do come across as self-conscious and some of us are not as into ourselves, on some very deep down bottom level, it's not that narcissism only identifies as looking good. We feel like we deserve much more than we actually have. That's one step of identifying narcissism. If you actually are under the impression that life is treating you poorly because you deserve much better, much more than anyone else. Generally, there are two forms of narcissism. There's bad narcissism and there's good one. We pretty much know how good narcissism come across. Someone who is really into themselves, but to a certain degree. People who put a lot of thought into how they dress, into how they come across. People who put a lot of thought into their education. Those who put a lot of thought into their physical appearance. This is a good form of narcissism, and from personal experience and based on what I would say, that this is a very good way of being narcissistic, a very healthy way. I would say this is more like of a healthy narcissism. Generally, the idea of healthy narcissism is that you go about fulfilling your needs in a non-exploitive or entitled way. So let's identify the bad narcissism. I am not talking about a narcissistic relationship. I'm talking about personal narcissism. How would you identify if you're overstepping, if you are too much into yourself? So here's a couple of examples. When you feel like that you are actually entitled to something else and life is treating you poorly. It's the same way as saying, oh, I should be smarter, but I ended up not being smart enough. It's all in your power. So if you feel like you are entitled to more, which is some weight of a narcissism trait, then you should work harder to actually achieve that entitlement, which is gonna bring up your self-confidence as opposed to your narcissistic traits. Genuinely, I'm a true believer that we should really install that self-confidence in ourselves, in our children, hopefully in our partner if we have one, because it all starts within ourselves. And if we are going to always diminish ourselves and put ourselves down, it's not gonna do any good for sure. And in order to not cross that line and to not become a narcissist and to not be self-absorbed, I believe it's emotional maturity. When you are emotionally mature and when you are well-read, well-educated, you can actually see the difference and you know the difference. Maybe you do come across as arrogant to some people, but you know in reality that you have the backup for it. Like if you want to come across as self-confident as opposed to narcissistic, then actually have proof that you are self-confident, that you are an educated person, that you are a fit person, and you actually take care of your appearance. So I don't see it being as a negative way as long as you have proof that you are actually who you say you are. A narcissist will only say that I want this, or I'm entitled to this, or I should be like this, but they have no proof to back it up. This is when I see the difference. And every time I meet new people and I have a conversation with someone, I can tell right away, and it's kind of a compass. I can say right away and I can feel right away when someone is an actual well-read person and someone who has a good reason to be self-confident. You need to have a good reason to be self-confident. You cannot just wake up one day and be full of yourself to some degree and have an actual thought that, oh, I'm entitled to much more than I have now. Then you should really have something to back it up. Do you educate yourself? Do you keep yourself in good health, in good shape? So it's kind of an intuitive feeling. You should be able to identify the difference between the two. Especially if you are in your late 30s, late 40s, by now you already know how to come across as self-confident as opposed to narcissistic. And because there's a very fine line, to some people you might come across as narcissistic, but if you know the reality and if you know the truth about yourself and who you are, you really should not be bothered by anyone's comments. Or if there's anyone who actually calls you on it, you have undeniable proof. Yeah, I can come across like that because I know how much work I put into myself, and I know how much I read, how much I work out, how much I take care of myself. So I have a good reason to be the way I am. And in general, being self-confident is a very good trait, and it's definitely taking me a while, and I'm sure it will take anyone a while to reach that level of self-confidence when you can actually say that about yourself. Up until then, you can fake it, fake it till you make it, until you actually are self-confident, until you actually do put in the work. One of the biggest difference between self-confidence and narcissism, narcissists look for validation from other people, while a self-confident person can find that validation within themselves. Unfortunately, in today's society, it's kind of hard to right away identify who's being too much and who's being just enough of a narcissist. It's only because everyone throws that dust into your eyes that they know this and they know that, and they come across as confident people when you get to the bottom of it, all they're really looking for is to validate themselves. So you have to really have an intuition when it comes to that. So if you are self-confident, that means you have healthy beliefs and realistic views when it comes to yourself. You're not going overboard, but also you are not diminishing yourself, because you know how much work it took and how much violence it took for you to become who you are. So I don't think that being self-confident, slightly narcissistic is necessarily a bad thing, and I'm truly installing this in my children. It's not that they should really be self-absorbed, but I want them to be self-obsessed a little bit with themselves so they can keep themselves in good shape, in good mental health, in good physical health. I don't see it being as a bad thing when you are slightly obsessed with yourself, because if you meet anyone new and you are in good physical shape, good mental shape, you're smart, you come across as a red person, they're going to take you that much more seriously, because they're thinking if you pay that much attention to yourself, that means you're going to be paying that much attention to whatever task they're trying to give you, or if they want to be in a relationship with you. So know that fine line. You can be borderline slightly obsessed with yourself. You do have one life, and you have one body, and you have one chance at being who you are. Just don't miss it. So please do share, how do you identify yourself? Do you think you are self-confident? Do you think you are borderline narcissistic? Let's see who has what to say, and I'll see you in my next video.